Welcome to Breaking Sales, a podcast dedicated to helping you have tough, meaningful, and rewarding conversations with your prospects and clients. In meaningful, what we mean is these are the conversations you truly feel like you are the prospect or client's conversational peer. There's no anxiousness or uncertainty holding you back. You feel a sense of calm and confidence in asking the tough questions. You're not thrown off by the bad news, and you expect the prospect to think about and invest into the conversation as much as you do. On Breaking Sales, we use the filter of psychology and innate human behavior to deconstruct the many misleading sales approaches that actually work against your efforts to build trust and close the business. Let's get started. There's a moment in every important sales conversation when you realize you could ask a question that really matters, one that would help your prospect think differently about their situation. But all too often, something holds you back. Maybe it feels too direct, too personal, or too risky for the relationship, so you let the moment pass you by. Meanwhile, your prospect walks away thinking about their decision the same way they always do, through routine mental processes filled with biases, assumptions, and past experiences. They can't think objectively about their own situation any more than you can talk yourself out of eating your favorite snack when you're in a moment of craving. Think about it. You're stuck in an airport after a long week, and you see and smell one of your favorite snacks or comfort foods. How good are you in that moment in asking yourself objective questions to help you avoid that temptation? The point is, you're not. None of us are. Which also means that your prospects are not well equipped to ask themselves questions to help them stay objective as they decide on a change to you or staying where they are. Today, Pam and I are exploring a fundamental shift that will change the conversations that you have with your prospects and the value that you create for them. We're talking about the responsibility to ask questions that helps your prospect go from routine thinking to critical thinking regarding change. Remember, if your prospect lacks a vision for change, they will lack the ability to take action. Help your prospect move from change uncertainty to change belief. Before we get into it though, here's a quick reminder that Breaking Sales is now available on YouTube. If that's where you like to listen to your podcast, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss future episodes. Let's get started. I heard something this week from you and Christy, Pam, that I really liked, and it was all about asking questions. And what I heard from you guys is this thought process, or even maybe this statement where you're saying, I owe you the question, but you do not owe me your answer.
Yep.
And I love that, where you're saying to someone, hey, listen, I owe you this question, but you don't owe me that answer. And it's very similar to what I always say to myself, which is, if I have a tough question to ask someone, I'll say, if I don't ask this question, I'm doing that person a disservice. It's a reminder to me that moves me away from the friend zone and being liked, and reminds me about my responsibility, which is to help people critically think.
Exactly.
And so when I started to dissect it, again, for our listeners, right? You don't owe me an answer, but I owe you the question. For our listeners, there's so much benevolence in that abundance and detachment, right? The abundance is not one question, not one answer is going to make or break the conversation, all right, or the deal. And the abundance is knowing that it's okay if they don't give you an answer. The benevolence part is huge, where you're literally acknowledging, I'm going to do this because I feel like it's in your best interest and on your behalf. But I'm also going to respect the fact that you may not want to vocalize your answer to me. And if that's the case, that is your choice. That is a high level, high intent benevolence. And then the detachment, right? It's so powerful when you say that, right? When you say, and you know what? You don't owe me the answer. Very, very powerful.
And when we talk about how you can demonstrate to a human being sooner than later that you are somebody they can trust, that type of a question goes a very long way to someone being able to trust you. But Dan, you and I talk about this a lot. You can't, we talk about mindset a lot and what it means to adopt an advisor mindset. These aren't tactics that we teach people to deploy. Hey, say this, and then maybe it'll lead to, you have to believe that that is your role in those conversations. And my whole thing. I want to leave the mark with every prospect that I talk to that she was helpful. She meant what she said. She doesn't have to benefit from the conversation. And she's actually there to be helpful, even though this might be our one and only interaction that I ever have with this woman. She was helpful.
But here's the thing, Pam. Define helpful.
So to me, when we say those words helpful, we talk about this, Dan, as human beings. We're not objective. We already come into a decision we're looking to make with a set of biases. And so my role in the conversation is to play that objective, neutral party. I am going to be the one that's leaving my biases at the door because I know you've got yours and they're coming into this decision as you talk to me. And so somebody has to play the objective, neutral role. Somebody has to sit back and really be listening and paying attention to body language and tone so that I can ask the questions that you probably aren't objective enough to think about.
So I love that. So I'm going to give you an example, right? I'm going to ask you a couple questions here. And I want our listeners to think along. Very important. All right, Pam, what's that vice that you have that you love to eat, but it's not good for you?
Sugar.
Okay. What kind in particular?
Cupcakes.
Cupcakes. All right. And so for our listeners, I want you to think about that vice. What is your vice that when it's in front of you, oh, it looks and smells delicious, and the experiences that you anticipate when you eat it are incredible, right? So, Pam, ready? This happens all the time, right? You're traveling Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, right? It's Thursday night. You're stuck in an airport trying to get home after 4 long days, and you smell the cupcakes.
Yep, which happens a lot.
Right? You're smelling those cupcakes, right? I can almost picture a cartoon where you're kind of waving through the air, smelling the cupcakes, right? Wherever the origin of the smell is, right?
Eating me there.
You're walking by the cupcake stand. What are some of your thought processes? What are you saying to yourself?
It's been a long week. It's one freaking cupcake. It's not going to kill you. You deserve it. Look how good it looks. What if you get hit by a bus tonight on your way home? Won't you regret not eating this cupcake? That's what goes on in my head. Sugar's not really that bad for you. I'm sure you could find some studies that would support eating a little bit of it during the day is okay. I mean, can you tell? These are the conversations I have with myself all the time.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? Our listeners, I'm sure for many, it's the same thing. So right now you're at that juncture and there you are. And so what happens if that voice says, are you sure? Are you sure you should eat it? What happens?
Stop. I slow down. I think about it.
Okay.
But that voice isn't going to come from me, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's not going to come from me.
So now I want to flip it for our listeners. Thank you, because that's so true for all of us. Now, Pam, I want you in that same situation. You're stuck in the airport. It's Thursday night. You're trying to get home, right? You smell the cupcakes. You're following the smell. There you are in front of the cupcake stand. You see a chocolate one right there with your name on it. But guess what? Your health coach is with you. And your health coach goes, Pam, it has been a long week. Does this decision make you feel better now? What's it going to do tomorrow?
And I'm not going to be the one to stop myself and do that because I lack objectivity when it comes to my stinking sugar.
That's the point. We lack objectivity. It's very, very difficult for us to ask ourselves objective questions, let alone answer them objectively. The only thing that would prevent you from that cupcake is if you had the health coach there saying, now, Pam, I get it, but are there other calories that you're going to consume this weekend? Are you going to get your workout in? What about the Oreo, chocolate-covered Oreo you had 2 nights ago, right?
I thought we weren't going to bring that up. Let's see, Dan, exactly. And you know what my health coach, you know what they would probably also say? I'm just going to ask you questions. You don't owe me an answer. Just think about it. Yep. 100%.
How powerful is that in that moment where they say, you don't owe me the answer. I just want you to think about it. And then they ask you the tough, meaningful question.
Big difference.
Huge difference. Huge difference. So what's happening there, right? It's not just the objectivity. It's the risk versus the gain, right? When we ask ourselves questions, we're not going to critically think. We're going to think through routine thinking patterns. That's the problem. So do prospects. When you let that prospect leave the meeting, they're going to think about change only through routine thinking habits, which are full of their biases. That's why it's so important as advisors that we're the ones that ask the questions that cause the critical thinking. And the biggest difference between routine thinking and critical thinking, routine thinking is all about past experiences, assumptions, all right, and current preferences. Critical thinking is the type of thinking that causes us to question past experiences, current assumptions, and whatever our current perspective might be. That's why it's so powerful that we have to play that role from a psychological standpoint as well of helping the other human being really think through the decision or the choices they're about to make.
And I have a really good example of this that just came up a couple weeks ago. I had a prospecting call. A young woman and a young man, they wanted to talk to me about the potential coaching their sales team now that they're getting a second iteration of a project that they're working on. And I'm asking them a lot of questions about the business, John Doe and Jane Doe. And we got to the point where I said, listen, John, I'm not naive to think that you haven't asked for recommendations to talk to other coaches. And I want you to be comfortable sharing with me, maybe potentially what you've learned, what, if anything, has resonated from those conversations. And he said, yes, absolutely. And he was talking about one. Then he starts to talk about this other gal, and his face lights up and his energy, and just a different John Doe was on the screen. And I said, John, can I make an observation? And he said, sure. And I said, a whole different John showed up when you started talking about her. And I said, you were smiling. You had a lot of energy. I said, why are you talking to other coaches? And he goes, aren't you kind of supposed to run a process when you look to do something like this? And I said, not necessarily. Maybe if you already have clarity on the direction you want to go. And I said, so I have a question that you need to think through. And I said, we don't need to talk about it. But the question is, do I already know what direction I want to go? And am I wasting my time entertaining conversations with other coaches that aren't her? And he was like, I appreciate that. And I got to tell you, once again, like that doesn't serve me whatsoever, but it serves me that I helped him. And it was funny, the way even his counterpart, Jane, she's like, well, I didn't see that coming from you. And I said, look at him. Somebody should help him think through whether or not he needs to invest any more time in talking to other sales coaches, because I think he may have it figured out. But I left that call feeling like, you know what? I helped him. And he had dead set. He had thought, you know what? You got to run a process. This is what you do when you do something like this. And I got to take time to learn about all the other approaches. And I just felt like, you know what? He's got to think through this a little bit.
Yeah, it was poise. It was a great story for me to hear because you respected him, her, and yourself. And that's how you want to go about being an advisor. It's not acquiescing. It's not being laissez-faire. As you were talking, it made me think of a story from earlier in the week on Monday. So I have a client, and they have a long sales cycle with this very large company. All right. And the CEO says to our client, hey, when we meet with the CFO and we meet with the COO and the board member, I just want you to tell them about all the things that you can do for us. So my client and I get on a strategy call, and to his credit, he's like, Dan, there ain't no way I'm doing that. I am not going down that road. I go, good, because it's not going to go anywhere. He goes, what do I do? I go, all right. So is the CEO probably going to start the meeting off? And he's like, yeah, more than likely. All right. So if he sets you up like that and he says, hey, so-and-so is here to share with us all the things he thinks he can do for our business, that's okay. Don't panic. I said, turn into it. Ask the CEO. Say to the CEO, I hear you. I'm happy to share. But before I do, because we've met a few times, could you share a little bit with the group on what you think we might be able to do for your business? And then I'm happy to fill in the gaps, because what I think may be different and not as relevant as what you think. There was silence in the room, and the CEO goes, you know what? That's a good idea. And he said, Dan, I hardly spoke a word for like 20, 25 minutes. I watched the board member ask questions, the CEO say this, that, the CFO jumped in. I just watched them all talk about what we could do for their business. And I said, that's great. I said, because now they own it, not you. And it was one of those questions where you had to be willing to ask. And it was just all about, can you help them critically think? And that's what it led to.
And that they don't necessarily have to tell you an answer.
No,
I mean,
that's the powerful part.
It does. They don't owe you that. They just don't owe you that. And there might not be a reason for them to share those things if you're being very genuine about why you're asking the question.
Yeah. And I think for our listeners, you'll find a lot of times there'll be a pause and there'll be some silence, and you just have to be okay with it. But I do say a lot of times you'll get an answer. You'll get some thought process. Every now and then you'll have someone say, okay, fair. I don't feel comfortable answering that just yet. Let it go.
I need to think about it.
Let it go, because you know what? The fact that they're thinking about it is more powerful than them in the moment giving you some stupid surface level answer.
Exactly.
So, rule of thumb, remember, you owe your prospects the powerful questions, the meaningful questions that helps them think through things like risk or gain, impact on their business or what they're trying to accomplish. You owe them the question.
From the lens of objectivity.
Yeah, you owe them the question, but remember, they don't necessarily owe you the answer. One of the takeaway points that I want you to think about is the idea around helping people see what they can't see for themselves, even when it doesn't benefit you directly. Remember, the phrase we discussed today, I owe you the question, but you don't owe me the answer, isn't just a clever way of asking those questions. It's a mindset shift that shows that you do have the other person's best interest at heart. It transforms you from someone extracting information into someone helping the other person gain clarity on how and if change should matter to them. You've elevated yourself and the conversation. So here's my challenge for you. Approach your next 3 important conversations from a place of curiosity about what's best for the other person. Ask the questions that will help them gain clarity, even if you're not sure where those questions will lead. Trust them. The more you operate with that mindset, the more you'll find that the prospects actually want to engage with your questions because they recognize you're actively trying to help them make the best decision they can. And that's where real trust and influence becomes possible. One more time, before we go, remember that Breaking Sales is now on YouTube. Subscribe to join our growing community of professionals who are ready to think about sales differently. Thanks for tuning in.